It's the Farmer to Farmer podcast, episode 141, and this is your host, Chris Blanchard. Brendan Davison grows microgreens in over 4,000 square feet of greenhouse space at Goodwater Farms in Bridgehampton, New York. Started in 2011 in the driveway of Brendan's house, Goodwater Farms sells its greens to Whole Foods markets and a long list of Hamptons and New York City restaurants. Brendan shares his spiritual and practical path to building Goodwater Farms, and we dig into many of the details of what makes Goodwater Farms a successful microgreens operation, including Brendan's marketing approach and how he manages production throughout the year. And we take a deep dive into how Goodwater Farms' implementation of a HACCP plan for food safety increased the operation's efficiency and improved employee competence and confidence. The Farmer to Farmer podcast is generously supported by Local Food Marketplace, helping farms and food hubs around North America implement easy-to-use online ordering systems that integrate with a full management system for order packing, invoicing, and payment processing. Contact them at localfoodmarketplace.com to learn more. And by Vermont Compost Company, founded by organic crop growing professionals committed to meeting the need for high-quality compost and compost-based living soil mixes for certified organic plant production. VermontCompost.com. And by BCS America. BCS two-wheel tractors are versatile, maneuverable in tight spaces, lightweight for less compaction, and easy to maintain and repair on the farm. Gear-driven and built to last for decades of dependable service. BCSAmerica.com. And before we get started today, we're going to get a quick word from Dave Chapman about an issue that's very important to organic farmers.
This is Dave Chapman from Longwind Farm in East Thetford, Vermont. This November in Jacksonville, Florida, the NOSB is voting on a proposal to prohibit hydroponic production from organic. This is a very important proposal, so I hope that everybody who's listening will at least go to keepthesoilinorganic.org and sign a petition and submit testimony, written testimony to the NOSB. Even better, come to Jacksonville and join the farmer rally that's going to be there. We've got probably 50 people who we're expecting to be at that rally to let the USDA know how we feel. We want to keep organic farming based on the soil.
Brendan Davison, welcome to the Farmer to Farmer podcast.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
So, Brendan, I'd like to start off by having you tell us about Goodwater Farms, where you guys are located, what you're doing, and how much of it you're doing out there.
Okay, so we're located in Bridgehampton, New York, which is on the east end of Long Island. Some of you probably out there have heard of the Hamptons. We, year-round folks, call it the East End, not the Hamptons. The Hamptons only last for about 3 months out of the summer. Clarifying that. So we're on a 32-acre farm in the middle of Bridgehampton. We grow in a 4,000 square foot greenhouse currently, and we are growing certified organic microgreens, and we are about to, probably another month away, become the first biodynamic microgreen company.
Wow, with the Demeter certification.
Exactly, yes.
Very cool. And how many square feet of microgreens production do you have? Is that all in greenhouses?
Yeah, well, yes. We have a 4,000 square foot greenhouse. Is pretty much all covered with flood tables, which we grow on. And we do have a loft space in our barn for, in the winter time, for winter production of a lot of the basil, cilantro, because they don't really like the cold nights when the temperatures get down into the teens out here. So we bring them in, and they're under T5 fluorescence, just for about 6 months out of the year.
How long has Goodwater Farms been around?
So I started the company in 2011, in the driveway of a house that I was renting in Amagansett, New York, which is 3 towns over for where we are now. And that's where I got the name Goodwater Farms. So Goodwater Farms is the English translation of the town of Amagansett, which is an Indian name, is called Place of Good Water. So I named the business Good Water Farms. And I had a 7 foot by 11 foot greenhouse in the driveway that I started the business in.
So how did you get to the point in 2011 that you started growing microgreens in a greenhouse in your driveway?
My experience was I lived in Los Angeles from 99 to 2006, and I grew cannabis I had grow houses all over Los Angeles that I grew in. So that's how I learned how to grow indoors. And how I know so much about hydroponics, because the first year that I grew hydroponically, and I couldn't sleep at night. I had one of my closest friends was diagnosed with cancer, and here I am, she wanted, you know, to make brownies that she could eat for chemo because it helped. And the minute I saw that, I was like, wait, chemo, growing in chemical fertilizers, what am I doing? This is not right. And that's when I made the switch to soil, and people in the grow community, which was at that time, this was during the Bush administration. We were seen as terrorists. We were seen as outlaws. It's not the way it is now. How open it is and accepted it has become. So, the people in my community were like, "You're going to grow in soil? Oh my God, the diseases you're going to have, this and that," and of course, when I started doing it and mixing soils, and at that time I was creating my own soils, just for connoisseurs, the flavors that were coming out, people were freaking out, and of course I could sleep at night because I knew it was grown, naturally in soil, so yeah, these are the little things and then from there, once I got out of that world, I was kind of in this lost place and not knowing what to do. And I started studying shamanism. I actually went to a school called the Four Winds to study the energy medicine of the Keros Indians in the Andes, of Inca descent. And I started going up there and going into San Pedro ceremony. I started going into the jungles with the Shipibo and doing ayahuasca ceremony. And from all of that, I realized, I was like, oh, I'm going to become an energy medicine practitioner, and that's how I can help people. Because even further back, even before I started growing cannabis, I was a roadie for Krishna Das. Now he's a Grammy award-winning kirtan walla, an American guy. And I was in India with him and trying to become enlightened. And I was asking him, well, how do I become enlightened? How do I become enlightened? And this is when I was like 26. And he said, let me tell you a story about when we were with our guru in 1969. And we had this woman with us who was a little annoying. She kept on for 3 months asking the same exact question to the guru. How do I become enlightened? How do I become enlightened? And every time she asked that question, he would kick us all out. So we kind of had this little bit of animosity towards her. And it was getting to the end. It was the last day. She was going back to the States. And of course, we asked, how do I become enlightened? And he just kind of was silent. He didn't kick us out, which was a sign. And then she was like, well, I got to go. And she was getting up. And as she was leaving, he looks up and then he just basically said, the way to enlightenment is to feed people and serve people. And I was like, what? And he was like, that's exactly how she was. She was so deflated because she thought that she was going to get like the handbook, like given to her, like from the gods. Like this is the way to do it. And, that simple notion of feed people, serve people. So I carried that through, that story in my mind. And when creating all this, and then in South America, trying to figure out what my next thing was, and in those kind of healing states of being an ayahuasca, I realized why I was sent here was to grow stuff. That was why I'm here. That's what I'm supposed to be doing. So that's when, of course, when I moved back to out here on the East End, trying to find that next thing to do, I was going to be an energy medicine practitioner, and I decided, and I started doing it. I started seeing clients, and it was one-on-one, and I just was like, God, this is great for them, but I'm not being fulfilled because I want to reach more. How can I reach more people? How can I help in the process of people healing themselves? And then food, going back, feed people, serve people. Food is one of the most healing things that a person can do to come into balance in themselves, is to eat right and to eat healthy. So, and that's kind of how the microgreens came in, because of course here I am, the cannabis grower in California getting, $3,000 a pound, and then looking around at the farmers getting $2 a pound for something. I'm like, my ego couldn't handle that. I'm like, yeah, no way. And then of course, microgreens, $30 a pound. Whoa, that's actually that's up my alley. And then also realizing the way that I learned to grow, which is like the sea of green. It's constant. There's never any downtime. It's always on. It's going. It's constantly moving. And growing in the ground and fields, the process doesn't fit me as who I am. I like things constantly changing, constantly moving. The flow that, and so microgreens it was the perfect fit, for me, for the way that I approach growing. So yeah, there's many more stories, but that's kind of just, it all goes back to that question that we all ask at some point in our lives. Why am I here? I got to that point when I walked I walked onto a plane, Iquitos, in the jungles of Peru. I was walking onto the plane, and I was like, I gotta start growing again. But of course, I'm not going to go down. At that point, I had a daughter, a 3-year-old daughter, and I just, that world, there's a lot of heaviness that comes in with that world that I came from, and that wasn't the environment that I wanted to raise my daughter in. So that's where that moment in New York City with the microgreens. At first, because when I was living in California, at the time that I was growing, was the same time that the raw food movement was happening. The farmers markets, that's where I learned about organics for the first time. The vegetarianism, the Ayurvedic ways of eating. Like there was like this concentration in Santa Monica of all these different ways of food, of eating, and different diets that I was exposed to. And in being exposed to that, I learned how to. Somebody was like, if you want to have like an incredible protein, it's almost a complete protein into your diet, grow sunflower seeds. So that's how, at first, I started doing that. And my daughter was born, and that's pretty much, she was eating them daily because I was growing them in the kitchen of one of the houses that I was growing in. So that's when I came back, when I got onto that plane, realizing that I need to grow again. I bought that little greenhouse, and I started just growing sunflower. And I was just growing it for friends. And then that's when that chance encounter, when I went into the city and had dinner with friends at a restaurant, that microgreens were kind of shown to me. And then that's it was all timing, really. And it's, I guess, in all of the teachings and the healings and everything that I was going through, it just kind of, I came into balance with myself and saw me for who I truly am and where I truly need to go and how I can help and how I can be of service. Yes, it's just all perfect, all timing, and allowing myself to open that up to have those, that timing kind of come in. And it ties everything in to the way that I do things, the way that I approach all of this. And to me, it's a practice. It's my practice. I think if farmers, growers, whatever it is, cattle ranchers, start kind of just understanding that everything is connected, everything is one. I know it sounds kind of cliche, but it's true. And I think if everybody can start approaching growing and farming in that way, I think we can change a lot of the imbalanced systems that are in place right now.
And how did you get from there to where you are now?
Uh, a lot of blood, sweat, tears, and a hell of a lot of money. That's it in the overall. So from there, it's been a long, stressful journey of 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Basically, from the first place in Amagansett, which is in the 7x11 greenhouse, I just started growing sunflower shoots at first. And then I was in Manhattan in a restaurant with some friends, and I saw these little tiny greens on top of the dishes that kept on coming out. And so I asked the waitress, and I said, what are these? And she's like, garnishes? And I'm like, it doesn't look like a garnish. This is something else. And she's like, let me get the chef. And the chef comes out, and he goes, oh, those are microgreens. You're like the first person that's ever noticed them. I'm like, oh, okay. And I'm like, well, what are they? And he's like, I'm not 100% sure, but I think they're just mini vegetables. And I'm like, okay. And so from there, I came back out, and I just started. This was like in the spring 2012, and I just started doing research with microgreens, and I found a couple companies, and I called them, but they didn't want to talk to me. So I called the seed company, Johnny's, who I was buying the sunflower seeds from to grow, and I asked them about that. The woman on the other end said, well, funny you should ask. We're actually launching a whole division, microgreens division. Could we send you samples to try out? And I said, yeah, of course. So they sent me some samples, and in no time I was, growing like 16 different varieties. And then from there, probably 15 years earlier, I used to work in a lot of the restaurants out here. That was a lifetime ago, but a lot of the same people had opened that worked in the restaurant that I worked at were working in other restaurants. So I kind of started going around and just dropping trays off, and then by midsummer, I had outgrown the little greenhouse and started looking for a bigger space.
So did you scale up to something that was between your driveway and where you are now?
Yeah. So, mind you, I had really no idea what I was doing, and nobody was really kind of helping. So I had to kind of create something. And I also didn't get a lot of support from the local farming community out here. They kind of they looked at me as a gimmick, as not a real farmer, and they kind of snubbed their nose at me. So I was on my own. So basically, I just took from my experience that I had of growing, and then I started calling myself a grower, not a farmer, because I kind of had a bad taste in my mouth, and I wanted to separate myself from the farmers. I know this is a farmer-to-farmer podcast, but that's kind of how it happened. And so I found a warehouse space in East Hampton, New York, and I started, the space was a 2,000 square foot, 30-foot ceiling space, and I kind of created tables kind of like I have now, but less professional, and used grow lights and started doing that. And then I cleared out the side of the warehouse, which I had the end of the warehouse, and I put up a 20 by 40 greenhouse. But this was in the woods, so I had little light. So I was stumbling for the next few years growing product, but it was working. It just wasn't efficient, and I wasn't maximizing my potential, I guess.
So how long did you spend kind of muddling along in that 20 by 40 house until you moved into your current setup?
Solid 4 years.
And now, I mean, the setup that you've got now, just from the pictures that I've seen, it's a pretty sharp looking setup. You've got, it looks to me like polycarbonate greenhouses with peak vents and heaters and the whole 9 yards. Can you tell us a little bit more about the infrastructure that you're working with there?
Yeah, so we worked with the company Nexus Greenhouse out of Colorado, and they were great. They just kind of helped me create the environment that I wanted. And I mean, that's kind of what an indoor grower does is, we create an environment. And so myself And the team there, we basically came up with the best greenhouse to use with the high gables, roof vents, side vents. And then inside, we have on the east end of the greenhouse, we have that runs the length of the 100 feet is our germination boxes, which we call the womb, basically. So the germination boxes are what, after we seed the flats, we put them into the germination box where it's warm and moist, and it stays in there. It depends on the variety, anywhere from 3 days to 7 days.
And that's just similar to a standard germination chamber. You've got some heat in there and some humidity that you're generating, and you're just waiting for those seeds to pop in that environment.
Exactly. And it's funny because now, a little over a year later, I figured out a whole different system to do. So for our second greenhouse, it'll all be different. It's like that's the, when there's not a instructional video of how to build a microgreen business, you kind of just have to figure it out. And then, of course, you kind of keep doing the same thing over and over again until you figure out that, oh my God, why am I doing that? And then, you shift your perspective 2 millimeters, and all of a sudden everything opens up, and you're like, oh, the way I'm doing it, it's not really that efficient. Let me try this. And then you do that, and then, hopefully not in another year, I'll be like, okay, we have to do a different way now. So it's a constant retooling and redefining our production facility.
I remember when we were first on my farm working out some of the details of winter production. This would have been in the late 1990s, and I was talking with Eliot Coleman, and I was bemoaning this exact process. It's like, okay, well, how do we get this done? And as soon as we figure out this, then we've got another problem, and we're trying to correct that. And I can't believe you don't have a solution for this, Eliot. And he finally says, Chris, he says, this is the perilous path of the pioneers. I'm like, oh man, that sucks, because that's hard. It's hard.
I know there's days when I'm just like, could somebody please just come and tell me what to do? And it's just, and of course you just figure it out.
Right. I mean, it seems to me that there's people doing microgreens out there, and there's people in various parts of the country who are being successful with it. I'm thinking of people that we've had on the show, Mike Bollinger and Greg Garbos. Mm-hmm. But I also feel like everybody's got their own unique approach to how they're getting the job done too. I mean, it's not like there's one system of doing it at this point.
Yeah. And of course, I've chosen the most, I think, challenging and difficult path, which is using soil. I think most of the companies that I know are pretty much hydroponics, and I just couldn't sleep at night if I was growing in that way.
Why?
I believe hydroponics is conventional farming. The use of chemicals to grow food just doesn't make sense. And then on a simpler, more maybe an esoteric or kind of more grounded way of looking at it, the way I see it is, us here as humans on the earth, we deal with the 5 elements: earth, air, fire, and water, and sometimes and ether. So when you remove one of those, it causes an imbalance. So when you're removing the most foundational one, which is earth, soil, you are creating you're growing in an imbalanced way. That's why they have to use tons of pH down or pH up. They have to use tons of bleach to clean, and they're using pretty much chemical fertilizer to feed those. So to me, that's an imbalanced system, and I'm not going to put that into my body. So I've gone in a more natural approach and a more balanced approach of growing in soil.
And so when you say growing in soil, you're obviously not like seeding the microgreens in the ground. You're seeding these in trays. What are you using for soil?
So we're using it's more of a potted mix. It's an organic mix. And now we're injecting the biodynamic principles into the soil as well.
Is this an off-the-shelf soil that you're buying, or is this something that you're blending on your own?
Both. I'm using the base from an off-the-shelf, and then I add to that when it gets here.
What are you looking for in a soil then? I mean, and I understand that some of this is proprietary. You know, we're not wanting to get into the exact components of the mix, but like, what are you after? What are you trying to build as a substrate for growing your plants?
I guess I'm really, again, it depends on the variety that I'm growing, but I'm trying to create a foundation with a lot of aeration, a lot of water retention, and yeah, just trying to create that foundation for whether it's a vegetable or an herb that I'm growing that can flourish.
And based on the comments that you made about hydroponics, I assume that you're using a compost-based soil mix to grow your plants in, something that's got the fertility kind of baked in already.
Yeah, you are correct.
You know, I mean, talking about these different ways of producing microgreens, and I'm on a microgreens list and on Facebook, and I'm always surprised because the growers that I've known have always done it in the soil, and of course that's always been my default setting as well, to do things in the soil, or at least in living soil mixes, and so I've seen a lot of comments about the hydroponic stuff. So I'm curious how you market your product. I mean, because obviously if you're choosing to grow in the soil, you're creating something that's differentiated from other microgreens in the marketplace. So where and how are you selling your microgreens?
It's probably about 60-40. 60%, we have a line of retail packs for Whole Foods, and the other 40 is to restaurants. For restaurants, we deliver living in the soil, so a living tray to the chef. But as we are scaling up, we are going to be cutting as well soon. And then for Whole Foods, we cut and package for them. And soon going in another direction, direct to consumer, where we are delivering, it's out here locally now, just delivering 4 different variety living greens, like a half tray in a box that's delivered to your doorstep. And then it's kind of like you're cutting it as you need, similar to the way we're doing it with the chef.
I'm really interested in the retail marketplace that you're talking about. That's where I did most of my marketing, and we have a lot of people that ask about breaking into that retail marketplace. And microgreens don't exactly strike me as being a consumer-friendly product. I think most of us tend to encounter microgreens in the way that you talked about them at first, in a restaurant as kind of a garnish on top of some other stuff. And so trying to convince somebody to buy 4 or 6 ounces of microgreens seems like a little bit of an uphill battle.
It is. And because as we speak right now, people still don't really know about microgreens. So in 2012, I did an interview with NPR, The Salt, and the interview was about the University of Maryland at College Park did a study for the Department of Agriculture and Food Chemistry. And in that study, they found that microgreens were 4 to 40 times more nutrient-packed than their mature leaf counterparts. This is something when I first started playing around and starting Good Water Farms that I knew. And it was like, when you're farming or you're doing whatever, you know something, but you know that it's going to, for people to believe you, it's going to require, a scientific study to be done. But in your heart and in your soul, you know that this is it. So that's kind of that feeling that I had. And then in 2012, this kind of justified my feelings. And from that 4 to 40 times more nutrient packed, that's when I started to go away, not away, but I redirected the ship, so to speak, towards retail consumer. And then in doing that, of course, Whole Foods is kind of the New York Yankees, so to speak, of supermarkets, certified organic, so forth and so on. And everybody I spoke to said, don't work with that company. They're going to steal your soul, blah, 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 blah. And of course, I just was like, no, I'm going to go forward with them because they are the place where my product is going to grow, so to speak. In working with Whole Foods in the retail sector, that's where kind of everything opened up for me, and I saw the path that I was going to go down very clearly. And so when I met with Whole Foods, I sat down with them for the first time and we spoke, knowing that I had in my back pocket, so to speak, the study of 4 to 40 times more nutrient packed. We were talking and they were saying, "Oh, they're too expensive. People aren't going to buy them." And I'm like, "That's funny. You know, you guys are whole paycheck. Like, I don't understand that." And I said, it's not so much about, let's not talk about price right now. Let's just talk about what microgreens are. And they said, okay. And the first thing that came out of my mouth to them was, I said, well, my product and the way that I grow in living soil and the nutrient content of 4 to 40 times of the mature leaf counterparts, I basically see our microgreens as the most nutritional thing that you will have in your store, bar none. And they all kind of looked at me like I was insane. And then I looked back at them by even looking more insane. And I said, tell me something that is not processed in a laboratory, like a vitamin. Tell me something that has a higher nutrient content. And they couldn't. And I said, well, wouldn't you want that for your customer? This incredible green that is 4 to 40 times more nutrient packed? And they were like, yeah. And they said, okay, give us 8 varieties and we'll start next week. And I was like, whoa, you gotta give me a little bit more time than that. I have to create a package. I have to create a label. I have to create a lot of stuff to get to that point. And we did it pretty quick, but we did it. And that's been kind of the direction that I'm going in more and more, especially with our cookbook that's out now. People are starting to understand how important microgreens are. And things that I say to people when they ask me about microgreens, I say, well, microgreens are the foundation of the new human diet going forward into the future. And they look at me and I'm like, you can eat them for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and for a snack. And you're going to get all your nutrients, all your phytonutrients, proteins, everything you need for your daily activities, whether it's running, surfing, climbing, biking, or working. If you incorporate them into your life, into your diet, they are pretty much the gateway to health. And that's kind of where I've gone now. Now it's pretty easy to get into the places that I need to get into. And now, more and more, like us doing this podcast, or the way that microgreens are becoming more and more accepted and known, it's just, I think there's a lot, believe me, there's a lot more work that we have to do on education, but in getting in marketing and getting the word out. And that's pretty much where we're at right now.
When you went to Whole Foods, especially with a product like microgreens, which are so, I think of as being so close to being sprouts. And I realize that they're different than sprouts.
Absolutely different.
Absolutely different. But being, well, actually, so I said I realize that they're different than sprouts, but maybe, okay, so again, this is sort of one of those gut level things. So why don't you tell me how microgreens are different than sprouts?
Okay. So sprouts are pretty much the first growth of the seed, the taproot and the cataledon, and they're grown in water. So when I had the USDA, our certification process through NOFA come down here to inspect us, the first thing they said to me was, okay, you're a microgreen company. I said, yes. And they were like, you don't grow sprouts. And I said, no. And they go, perfect. And I said, well, what's the difference? And they're like, well, microgreens are, if they're doing it the right way, grown in soil. So the taproot is going into the soil and it's growing, and then the first true leaves of the vegetable or herb grow. A sprout is the stage before that. So you don't need to put it into any kind of medium. So once those true leaves come, then it becomes a microgreen.
And I know that sprouts and microgreens are regulated differently from a food safety standpoint, but how did you get over that food safety hurdle with Whole Foods, especially, as a smaller, scrappier operation?
Well, we had to create a HACCP plan and we had to hire a person to come in and create that plan with us. And that agent who came in kept lumping us into sprouts, and I kept, and there was a battle for a good day until he finally realized, oh yeah, you are not a sprout. And he said to me, he goes, and when it came to finally realizing, he said, you know what? The reason why sprouts have such a bad health record, so to speak, is because they're grown in water. And water is the carrier of disease, not soil. It's water. So anytime you see, one of the farms out west or wherever, there's salmonella or in spinach, and it's like, what? And it's just a runoff from the big factory farms, or it could be, the migrant workers, defecating in the fields, and the water is the carrier that causes disease, not soil. So that's when, of course, thank goodness, our HACCP agent realized that, and then we all got on the phone with Whole Foods and made that distinction as well, and they agreed, okay, there is a difference. So that's kind of how it's not, I mean, it wasn't easy, but we finally got to that point of that differentiation.
And when you talk about hiring a HACCP agent, this was a consultant. This isn't somebody from the government coming in and telling you how to do things. This is somebody from private industry coming in and essentially creating a food safety plan for your farm.
Yeah, which is a lot of money.
Yeah, yeah.
And, but I think that's kind of where the other thing is, where I think going back to your question you asked a couple, how do we market it and how do we differentiate? Being certified organic, being now almost certified in transition biodynamic, having a HACCP plan, what we're saying to the public is we're transparent. Come and look at us. We have 3 different people coming in random times to check on how we are growing and making sure that we are growing the way that we say we're growing. And I think that's really important. Yes, it's a cost, but I mean, don't you want to be transparent to show the public of how you're growing? And I think that's something where I see it as, yes, it's a big expense, but down the road, that transparency is going to pay off, because the way that the conscious consumer now in the United States is educating themselves more and more, they're going to want to know, okay, not only where does my food come from, who is growing my food, and why are they growing it the way they're growing it, and who are they? And those are things that I see as a marketing tool for anybody, whether you're a microgreen farmer, a mushroom farmer, a flower producer, or whatever it is. Transparency, I feel, going forward into the future is the key marketing element, and not just marketing, just as the soul of a farm on that end, so to speak.
Going through that HACCP verification, what kinds of changes did you have to make to meet those HACCP requirements?
Create a lot of paperwork. Basically. Not so much had to change, it's more documentation. Not really changing the way we're our production. It's just documenting every step, which at first, and we're still going through it, it's a pain in the ass. Okay, we have to teach everybody to wash their hands the right way. But then every time everybody washes their hands from one room to the next, you have to document it. You have to, and it's just, it's tedious. It's like your mind starts to melt with the amount of like, oh my God. But as our agent always says, he's like, it's always toughest in the beginning. After a couple of years, it just becomes second nature because you have to train yourself and your employees. This is the way we're doing things. So it's not so much the production aspect of growing. It's more of all that surrounding and supporting that growing. Does that make sense?
That does. It's really kind of systematizing the things that you're already doing and making them into formal documented processes rather than just saying, hey, wash your hands.
Exactly. And to be honest with you, what I'm noticing is we're becoming more efficient, which that's something that I've been striving for since I started this thing is efficiency. How to become more efficient. And, going through this HACCP and creating these plans, at first it's like, oh God, I can't believe we have to do this. This is ridiculous. Now, as we're like halfway into it, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. We're actually producing faster, and the process is speeding up a little bit, so to speak. We're becoming more efficient. We're kind of coming into like a well-oiled machine in a way. We're kind of like I don't know if you watch basketball, but we're kind of becoming the Golden State Warriors in a way. Like the way that everybody's working as a team. It's about the team. It's not about one individual person. To my amazement, it's created more efficiency.
When everybody thinks about paperwork, they say, oh, it's going to, it takes so much time to fill out the paperwork, and it takes so much time to train people to fill out the paperwork. But you're saying that this process of documenting and then doing the paperwork as you go is actually helping to make you guys more efficient. Can you get it? How? Like, do you know what the mechanism is there, or can you give us an example?
Well, I think starting out when it's like, that's what I hear with everybody that's not certified organic. It's too much paperwork. It's too much money. I don't have time for that. And it's like, no, you do have a lot of time for that. And it is very important. I think it's training the mind where I'm noticing it's training your employees that there's a system. It's kind of like what it's creating is sharpness, meaning, okay, now that you know that you have to take the gloves off or leave certain things in this room because you can't bring it into the other room. At first, it seems like it's taking more time because you have to do something. But in the mind of your coworkers and the mind of yourself, you're realizing that it's creating more space for the philosophies, the way you grow. It's creating more of also too, it's like, now you know that those scissors are in that room and they'll always be in that room. Or that sometimes the guys will take the scissors out, you put them in your back pocket, and then you put them down somewhere, and then you go back in and you're like, oh my God, where are my scissors? And then where did I put them? Hey, do you see my scissors? Hey, do you have my scissors? Where'd my scissors go? But if you know that those scissors can't leave that room and you put them down, you're not going to lose your scissors. They're there. Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense. To me, it sounds a lot like what some of our guests have talked about with the lean farming, that like the Ben Hartman talks about, and kind of applying some of those manufacturing principles to farming. Like you say, when everything has a place, all of a sudden now you really do free up energy to think about the bigger picture, to really solve the problems that you should be solving instead of having to solve the problem of where the hell are my scissors.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you for getting that in my head. Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to say. Yeah, it's true. It happens all the time. Bring stuff out of the greenhouse, and then you're like, oh my God, I forgot this, and you have to go all the way back to the other. And it's not like you're walking miles. You may be walking, in essence 20 feet. But if you multiply what it takes time-wise to walk that 40 feet, 20 feet there, 20 feet back, you realize that adds up a lot.
Well, and I don't know about you, but the other thing that always added up for me when things weren't where they were supposed to be, and a lot of times it was me who hadn't put them there, but was it the cussing and the swearing and the frustration also takes a certain amount of time and energy. It's not just the walking, but it's the mental energy that goes into, well, my scissors aren't where they should be. Where are they? Why aren't they there? And damn it, this is frustrating.
Yeah, and then take that a little bit further and realize that you are a food producer and you're putting that frustration and that energy into the food that you're packaging or growing. And I think that's something that goes off in a different direction. I think that's something that people are going to start understanding more and more, even with greens, with vegetable production, is, who's growing your food energetically. And that's why, going through this HACCP plan, it creates space, like what you said. It creates space in the mind. It creates space in everybody that's working. That's like, it creates a flow that, there's constantly, wrenches being thrown into the machine to slow things down, but everybody's kind of, once you're flowing, creating that flow, it really allows you to open up energetically as well. And that just creates an amazing product, whatever it is you're making.
I couldn't agree more. Having been on both sides of that energetic flow before. So, now you're talking about a HACCP verification. Now, usually when I talk to producers about food safety, they're talking about GAPs or GIPs, the good agricultural practices, the good handling practices, and going through audits for that. What's the difference between going through the GAPs process and going through the HACCP process?
The goal is the same. The end of it is the same. It's just they're just looking for different things. The HACCP, they're just looking to make sure that all of the paperwork is there, that you're doing it. GAP, meaning, that's more the, good agricultural practices. They're just wanting to make sure you're not slipping in, Miracle Grow, stuff like that. So it's similar. It's same, but different.
And when you talk about transparency, and this is where I always think it's interesting when you're going through a retail marketplace, right? It's one thing to go to a chef and say, hey, I'm Brendan Davison, I'm from Goodwater Farms, and I'm really cool, and I've got these certifications, and this is what they mean, and see my passion and taste my food. It's another thing to sell something to a produce buyer at a grocery store and say, I'm Brendan Davison from Goodwater Farms, I'm really cool, see my product, taste my food. But then they have to take that next step and go to the consumer, or somehow it has to get relayed to that retail buyer that you are cool, that you are transparent, that this is what all that transparency means. And this is why they should buy those microgreens. How have you bridged that gap?
That's a good question. I'm still bridging it. Here's how I kind of see it, and I'm going to kind of go in a kind of another direction. But in the United States, the American public with food, it's all about the way it looks. In Europe, it's all about the way it tastes. So working with chefs here, American chefs especially, because that's how they've been indoctrinated into the food system, is it has to look perfect. So chefs from Europe, it has to taste amazing. And the way it tastes amazing is don't use a lot of stuff. Keep it very simple. So that's kind of my mentality is in growing our microgreens. It's all about flavor, and that's why I grow in soil. It's all about the flavor. And it's difficult sometimes because now switching to the retail market, I'll see some of the microgreens that we're cutting and it doesn't look perfect. Maybe it's a shade, little bit yellow, but it's not bad. But I know in my mind, I'm like, we have to stay perfect. We have to stay perfect because that's how the American consumer looks at their food. It has to look perfect. That's why it's always, everything's packaged. That's why packaging is so important in retail. They don't care if it tastes like tasteless or tastes like crap. Selling to the retail markets and knowing that it has to look good, I think that's where, and I said it before, that's a good question. I'm trying to bridge those those philosophies, the way of Europe and the way of the United States. And what I'm trying to do is, in a sense, which is going to probably take a very long time, is kind of change the American palate. Meaning microgreens, the flavors of microgreens are so much stronger than their mature leaf counterpart, more intense flavors. So people that come to the farm here and they'll, chefs and stuff, they'll walk down, they'll cut off a piece of cucumber microgreens and they're like, oh my God, this tastes like the most amazing cucumber I've ever had in my life. I'm like, exactly. Or they'll grab some Genovese basil and, oh my God, this is the flavors. And I'm like, exactly. So I think that's where working with restaurants and retail, you have to make it look good because that's why people buy it. It has to look good in the American book. But also once they get it home and they open up that package and they taste it, that's where I get them. That's where, wait a minute. Not only is it good for me, it tastes really, really good. And that's just, it's a slow process, but, you know, I don't plan on going anywhere. And as I said earlier, I feel that microgreens are the foundation of the new diet. So going forward, it's just going to take time for that bridge to be completed.
Do the chefs that you're talking to generally know what it is that you're talking about? Do they go, oh yeah, microgreens?
Yeah. This is something that, if I could always go back in time and change what comes out of my mouth, is that statement of I only work with chefs, which at that time, yes, but being that idealistic, naive young man, well, you know, a couple of years ago, that was my way of thinking. It was like, okay, I'm only going to work with the chefs that really know what this is. But then you have to, of course, being a grower, a farmer, you also have to put on the business cap sometimes and realize, oh my God, I'm shooting myself in the foot here. I'm alienating the majority and only dealing with the minority. Yeah, I kind of changed that tune a little bit. Now, you know, working with chefs, true chefs that know what they're getting, it's easy because it's a collaborative. They know, and they know I know, so we work together to create something. The ones that are using it as a garnish, you know, that may be at first what they're using it for, but over time, and then of course, you know, here's, you know, the loudmouth New Yorker always in their ear going, oh, I think you should try this on this dish. Oh, you'll get a better flavor with this. There's no reason for you to be putting all those dried herbs on there. How about you add this as the, you know, and over time, all of a sudden, it happens. It switches. And then they're like, what else you got? I mean, you know, as we're on the phone, I'm getting text messages from chefs right now. Hey, I'm doing this special. How would this, what do you think would work well with this dish? And so, of course, it's just like, it's a process, like everything. And it just takes time. And sometimes you just have to get out of your own way and your own belief system sometimes in the way that it should be or the way that you want it to be. And as soon as you could do that, things open up.
With that, we're going to stop here, get a quick word from a couple of sponsors, and then we'll be right back with Brendan Davison from Goodwater Farms in Bridgehampton, New York. The Farmer to Farmer podcast is brought to you by Local Food Marketplace. Are you trying to scale up without the right systems? Instead of juggling email and text orders, spreadsheets for harvest, packing, and delivery, and a separate invoicing system, Local Food Marketplace's software platform will help your farm automate these tasks and decrease errors with its fully integrated system for online orders, inventory management, order packing, invoicing, and payment processing. Easily configure the system for managing multiple sales channels, customer types, price levels, and delivery routes. The platform also offers lot number traceability and an option to collaboratively sell products with other producers. Check out their website, localfoodmarketplace.com, to schedule a free consultation on how Local Food Marketplace can help you efficiently manage customer orders from pack house to your customer's doorstep. Perennial support for the Farmer to Farmer podcast is brought to you by Vermont Compost Company, makers of living potting soils for organic growers since 1992. In addition to being excellent physical products that grow amazing transplants year after year, Vermont Compost potting soils are really an embodiment of the best of the art and science of potting soil. Seriously, would you rather eat bread or drink beer rooted in a place and made with a deep tradition and respect? Or would you rather eat bread and drink beer that's the product of the most reductionist of modern science, which gave us sliced white bread in plastic bags and the most unpalatable military industrial beer? And would you rather use potting soils based on reductionist science that require the daily infusion of liquid fertilizers? Or would you prefer to use potting soils based on living compost and the best ingredients designed to bring the rich diversity of biology into your greenhouse planting trays and soil blocks? I know what I prefer. And that's why I would encourage you to take advantage of Vermont Compost Company's fall pre-buy program to help you get what your plants need at the best price with the best shipping options. Don't miss out. Vermont Compost fall pre-buy program runs through December 21st. VermontCompost.com. All right, and we're back with Brendan Davison from Goodwater Farms in Bridgehampton, New York. So, Brendan, we talked about soil in the first half of our conversation and how you're buying in soil and then you're adding other ingredients to the compost-based soil mix that you're purchasing. And it sounds like you're doing different soils for different crops. Is that right?
Yes and no. Since we grow 32 different varieties of microgreens, we don't change it for each one individually. We kind of group it into, brassicas. It depends. And it depends on, we try to get the ones that are kind of all growing at the same rate. So that's kind of how we do that.
I guess just to walk through the process, then the first thing that I think you would do with microgreens is you've got to fill some trays with soil. What kind of trays are you using and how are you getting the soil mix into those?
So we're using just 10 by 20 flats. And currently right now, and the way we've done it since the beginning, when I started it by myself, everything's done by hand, scooping the soil into the trays, seeding, everything is done by hand. But as we're scaling up and we're about to make this next jump, so to speak, in production, I'm starting to look at the technologies out there, like hoppers, automatic machines that put the soil into the trays. So we're kind of in that place right now. We're in that next growth period where I'm looking for technology to kind of assist us in the growing.
But for right now, you're just hand scooping the soil into there and then I assume leveling that off.
Yeah.
Do you feel that this was always a discussion that we had when we did a little bit of microgreens production on our farm, and probably, that's like when I'm talking to a microgreens producer and I say we did a little bit of microgreens production, it's probably like it's probably like me saying I do a little bit of farming now when I've got my 500 square foot garden, right? But we always had the discussion of, do I fill this tray full or am I filling it half full? Where are you guys at with that?
It all depends on the variety. That's pretty much, and we're constantly tweaking everything we do. We have notebooks and notebooks for each variety that we do, we've done over the years, because, you have to take into effect everything: temperature, humidity, sunlight. So it all depends, it all depends on the variety. So sometimes we're filling it half, sometimes we're filling it a quarter of, sometimes we're filling it 3/4, sometimes we're filling it all the way to the top. It all depends.
And I assume that it depends on how big the seeds are and how long things are going to be in that tray and needing the nutrients from the tray.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So, in wintertime, some of our varieties it takes, 32 days. So we'll use a little bit more soil. Others take 8 days. So we use a little bit less soil. Then sometimes, it's just, they're all, they're all so different. And so they're like children, one likes drinking water, another one only likes water sometimes. Sometimes they like being in full sun, other times they like being in the shade. I think a lot of people that I talk to, new growers that are coming in, and they'll email me, ask me questions, and they get so frustrated sometimes with me because I'm like, well, it's different. It depends on the time of the year. It depends on this. And they're just like, can you just tell me the exact? And I'm like, listen, this isn't Coca-Cola where you flip a switch and it all comes out exactly the same. This is, in the south east corner of the greenhouse, it's a little bit warmer than in the northeast side. Like it's like it's just so many variables. Everybody, even farmers that want to do add microgreen to their farm, it's just like they just think, oh, it's just it's systematic. It's just gonna happen, and it's just not. There's so many different variables, and it's constantly changing. And that's what I tell everybody too. It's like, if you're starting out, if you're starting with one variety, do 10 different ways of growing it and document each one and put it in different areas of the greenhouse or whatever you're growing. Because you're constantly having to change anything. And it happens every year with me. I'm like, spring into summer, I'm like, oh my God, why didn't I put the shade cloth up? And, we burned half of a row of something because I didn't put the shade cloth up at 7 a.m. And I thought, oh, I could just wait till 11 a.m. It's a dance. It's a dance.
To come back to what we were talking about before the break with the HACCP planning and kind of documentation, like how do you communicate to your staff something like, today we're going to fill the flats half full for this crop and 3/8 full for that crop and all the way full for this crop? And that may be different than what we were doing last week for exactly the same crops. How are you getting that information across to people?
Well, that's the beauty of the HACCP, of making those documents, because it's hanging on the wall. We have boards everywhere. We have, clipboards hanging. So, at first you have to, the first time you're implementing something, of course, you have to spend some time that everybody gets on the same page. But that's the beauty of having these documents. And that's where I was saying, instead of, one of the guys going out and being in the greenhouse and going, oh, do I put this here or do I let me go find Brendan. And, who knows where Brendan's going to be. So then they take however long it is to find me and then ask me that question. And meanwhile, all I have to do is, look up or to the right or left or walk up a little bit and get the clipboard and go, oh, yeah, that's where I put it. So that's where the efficiency comes in. And it's just, it's empowering, the workers too, where they're making the decisions. I mean, yes, there's somebody made a decision like myself before that, but I see it. I see it with a lot of my guys that come in that have worked for me. They're a little shy or hesitant, and they don't know if they're doing it the right way. And so having that there, it's like it builds confidence with them too, because they know. And then when a new employee comes in, those guys can be like, hey, just you don't have to come find me. Just go look at the clipboard. It's right there. Oh, okay. And then it actually, I think, like I said, it creates more efficiency.
Yeah, and it helps people to feel, I mean, you said empowered, but I also think just confident and capable because they have the tools that they need to do the job. They have the information and it's right there. And instead of always feeling like they don't know, they actually get to feel like they know, even if it's not in their brain, it's immediately available to them.
Exactly. And, we didn't talk about this, but, when I have new employees come in and, they're like, well, I don't really have any experience growing or, in agriculture. I didn't go to school for it. I'm like, me either. I'm like, and I'm like, you have a good heart? And they're like, huh? I'm like, you have a good heart. You believe you have a good heart? And they're like, yes. And I'm like, there you go. That's all you need. Welcome aboard. I don't have any training in any of this. I mean, any schooling. I never went to any school. I never worked for a master at the craft. I just had a feeling, and that's pretty much it.
So then you got the flats full, and now it's time to put the seeds in. I'm going to guess, because you said you're hand filling the flats. Are you just sowing by hand as well?
Yeah. I mean, we have different tools of measuring the different seeds, but again, there's variables, different times of the year, different temperatures. I mean, this spring on the East Coast, it was cold. And then this past September that we had was extremely warm. It was like June. I mean, it was not June. It was like July temperatures. It was like 85, 90 degrees. So I always tell everybody, going back to what I said, you have a good heart. It's all about feelings. Like, okay, yes, you have to scoop 2 tablespoons, let's say, for something. But know your surroundings. What's it like today? But then also, what's it going to be like 7 days from now? So I'm always telling everybody, just trust your feelings. Trust what are you feeling right now? And so, that's pretty much how we're doing it right now. Again, we're going to start bringing in different technologies to kind of help speeding up production because of the demand that we have. So I never want to lose that hands-on approach. And it doesn't mean you have, your hands touching everything, meaning just there's a care. There's an awareness of what's happening in the process.
And how do you make sure when you're broadcasting by hand that you get an even distribution?
Man, it takes time, just takes it's almost like a chef learning how to chop, you know, using that tool, using the knife. When you're first starting out, you're like, okay, you're chopping slowly. But after you've done it for months, you've probably been with a professional chef, and you're like, holy cow, look at the way
right. Yeah.
It's a craft. You're creating, it's like, wow. So it's kind of the same thing. It just takes time, not everybody that I'm hiring is seeding. I really have my people that are, they're seeders. They're not anything other than that. That's what they're amazing at. And, this person over here, let's find a different area for them to concentrate on. So it's just like, it's an art form. And that's kind of how I look at it.
Then, of course, you take the flat, then it's seated, you're putting it on benches. What kind of benches do you have? What are you using for that?
They're just flood tables. So the watering is from the bottom up.
Okay. And that, I assume, is a disease control issue, right? I mean, we talked earlier about sprouts and well, not necessarily a food safety issue, but just a disease in the plants issue, that you don't want to be creating a moist canopy or a moist under canopy, and watering from the bottom make sure that those leaves stay dry and you never end up with the opportunity for bacteria to multiply or fungi to germinate on those leaf surfaces.
Absolutely. Yes.
Are you cutting those crops and placing them directly into the clamshells, or are they getting bulked into a container? Are you harvesting and then dropping them into a container and then clamshelling them later? What's your process for that harvest and post-harvest handling?
Well, this is where HACCP comes back in. So we are cutting and directly placing into the package. And people are like, you don't wash them? And we don't. Because, as our HACCP agent said, water is where disease and contamination happens. It's the number one carrier of contamination and disease is water. So if you eliminate that, and then, you have to state on the label, not washed. So then it's up to the consumer to, if they feel that they need to wash it, then they do.
Well, and of course, not washing also means that if you do have contamination on one portion of your greens, you're not going to spread it to every other green that goes into that water. Because that's the other challenge, I think, with water, is that it's not just a potential source of contamination. It can spread it over everything that goes into the water.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. Yeah, that's pretty much why, we, in doing our HACCP, the agent was like, no, you do not have to wash, because of what you just said. Yeah. And you see it too. I mean, even in a flat, there's a quarter of it that is unusable, and you can just see, you're like, but on the other end, it's completely fine. So that happens. You just cut around the bad areas.
I assume that then once you harvest, stuff's going straight into a walk-in cooler?
Correct, yeah. And then the room that we cut in is cold. It's an air-conditioned room.
Oh, really? What temperature? And when you say cold, is it cold like 38 degrees cold, or cold like 55 degrees cold?
Like 55 degrees cold. I wish it could be 38, but my cutters would not be happy.
I tried that on my farm, and I actually remember one farmer I worked for talked about, we should pack the CSA boxes in the walk-in cooler, and pretty much everybody was like, no, not going to happen. So how are you getting those flats from the greenhouse to that cool room, and how do you protect them from contamination in that process?
So basically just on nursery carts. When we came onto the new property in Bridgehampton, we built everything based on the way that we were doing it before. And now I'm realizing, oh man, we're here we go. We're not being efficient. We're carting from the greenhouse into the cut room. Here, what going forward, we should just have the cut room right next to the greenhouse, not 20 yards away. So basically, we're just putting it on nursery carts and covering it and bringing it into the cutting room. You're eliminating a lot of contamination when you have these things in place for HACCP. You're eliminating a lot of that contamination, because you have a system in place.
maybe we should have said earlier what HACCP actually stands for. It's Hazard Analysis for Critical Control Points. And so basically you're looking at where are all of the potential places for contamination to happen and what are we going to do about it?
Exactly. And, again, going back from hydroponics to growing in soil, there's so much more critical points in hydroponics than there is in growing soil. So our HACCP agent, he drove all the way from western Pennsylvania to our farm, which took, like 6 hours. And we were planned to have him be here for Monday through Friday. And when he got here and we were going through the process, the first day was, just we're all getting our bearings. By the second day, he's like, I think I'll be out of here 2 days earlier. And we're like, wow, okay. And he's like, because you don't really have a lot of critical points in the system, And so that was great to hear because, we saved a little bit of money not having him here for 5 nights.
Where do you go to get your seeds? What are you looking for when you're sourcing seeds for microgreens?
Well, I'm always looking to go direct to the farmer who's growing the seeds, but unfortunately, that's not the way the system is in place, where there's middlemen. So I want to work with companies like Johnny's, High Mowing, and I'm looking at the seed. I'm looking for high germination rates. That's what I'm looking for everything. High germination rates, of course, certified organic. And I always ask the agents that I'm working with, I'm always like, well, tell me about, the farmer. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, I'm not asking, you're not going to give me his email address or his phone number, but tell me, what's he like? Nice guy? Nice woman? And they're kind of like, yeah, he's a family man. I'm like, oh, okay, great. I just want to know where it's coming from. Like, who's growing my seeds? That's important. Like, the consumer wanting to know who's growing their food.
I like that. Well, and again, if you have that belief that the attitude that you carry or who you are carries over into the food that you're growing, that would be especially important for a microgreens grower because you're just not that far from the seed.
Exactly. Exactly.
With that, we're going to take another short break here, get a word from one more sponsor, and then we'll be right back with our lightning round. This lightning round and perennial support for the Farmer to Farmer podcast is brought to you by BCS America. BCS two-wheel tractors are often mistaken for just a rototiller, but it is truly a superior piece of farming equipment. Engineered and built in Italy, where small farms are a way of life, BCS tractors are built to standards of quality and durability expected of real agricultural equipment, the kind of dependability that every farm needs. I've had the good fortune to work with BCS tractors for over 24 years, and I wouldn't consider anything else for my small tractor needs. And I am not the only fan. More than 1.5 million people in 50 countries have discovered the advantages of owning Europe's most popular two-wheel tractor. And these really are small tractors, the kinds of features found on their four-wheeled cousins, and a wide array of equipment. Power harrows, rotary plows, flail mowers, snow throwers, sickle bar mowers, chippers, log splitters, and more. Check out bcsamerica.com to see photos and videos of BCS in action. bcsamerica.com. Brendan, what's your favorite tool on the microgreens farm?
My favorite tool is this, I call it a stamper. I made it out of a piece of white birch and a clothes hanging rod, wooden rod. Basically, it's just, I cut it so it could fit inside the 10 by 20 flat, and I just stamp down the soil to make an even plane to work with. I kind of made it. I still have it. It's still being used.
It's those little things that add up.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You must be a pretty busy guy with the farm. What was your last purely recreational activity?
I surf. We just had Hurricane Maria. It came up the coast and created an amazing swell for us. And Irma. We had about 27 days of surf up here on the East End. So that was my last recreational activity.
Does the surfing ever get in the way of the farming?
Absolutely. Ay. The only times when I get the text message, it's going off, get here now. I'm like right in the middle of like a huge production day. I'm like, great. And then, I'm only, a 10-minute drive to the ocean. So,
And out of all the microgreens that you grow, what's your favorite crop to grow?
I guess my favorite crop right now is Thai basil. I don't know. It's because it's usually what I'm eating. And right now I'm on this Thai basil kick. So I guess Thai basil is my favorite at the moment.
And finally, if you could go back in time and tell your beginning farmer self one thing, what would it be?
Stay the course. Never deviate from your vision. Once you have that vision, just keep going back to that vision.
Brendan, thank you so much for being part of the Farmer to Farmer podcast today.
Thank you, Chris. That was great.
All right. So wrapping things up here, I'll say again that this is episode 141 of the Farmer to Farmer podcast. You can find the notes for this show at farmertofarmerpodcast.com by looking on the episodes page or just searching for Davison. That's Davison. The transcript for this episode is brought to you by Earth Tools, offering the most complete selection of walk-behind farming equipment and high-quality garden tools in North America. And by CoolBot, allowing you to build an affordable walk-in cooler powered by a window air conditioning unit. Save $20 on your CoolBot when you visit farmertofarmerpodcast.com/CoolBot. Additional funding for transcripts is provided by North Central SARE, providing grants and education to advance innovations in sustainable agriculture. You can get the show notes for every Farmer to Farmer podcast right in your inbox by signing up for my email newsletter at farmertofarmerpodcast.com. Also, if you enjoy the show, please head over to iTunes, leave us a review, talk to us in the show notes, tell your friends on Facebook. We're at Purple Pitchfork on Facebook. And hey, when you talk to our sponsors, please let them know how much you appreciate their support of a resource you value. You can support the show directly by going to farmertofarmerpodcast.com/donate. I'm working to make the best farming podcast in the world, and you can help. Finally, please let me know who you would like to hear from on the show through the suggestions form at farmertofarmerpodcast.com. I'll do my best to get them on the show. Thank you for listening. Be safe out there and keep the tractor running.